Hi everyone, I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to my show Inspired Radio. I'm here with you every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Melbourne, Australia time, and Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central Time for Canada and US for conversations and stories to inspire you. This is the BBS Radio TV platform, and we're going live to over 200 outlets worldwide. Before we get started, I'd like to just say thank you to my sponsors. To you, sponsors of the show, thank you, thank you, thank you. Inspired Radio is all about change and getting uncomfortable and shaking up the status quo because we are currently breaking free from limiting systems and living and limiting lives and embracing our infinite potential. My guests are here to tell their story because storytelling is creating a new world. And today on the show, we're joined by Alex Saunders, who's creator of an independent platform called Nugget's News. Since launching the channel in 2017, Alex has built a strong following through wide-ranging conversations with guests who sit outside mainstream media circles and often challenge conventional narratives. His interviews have included international figures such as David Icke, Aniki Lucas, Mark Devlin, and Max Egan, and even our local voices too, like Craig Cole, Tom Barnett, Rachel Vaughan, Dale Holmes. Topics: transhumanism, big pharma, governments, pedophilia, our health, consciousness, crypto, UFOs, our history, Tartaria. No topic is off limits. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Helen. Look forward to getting into all the good stuff today.
Isn't that great? I want to say to everybody before we get started, Alex's platform, for the last 15 years, I've gone down many, many rabbit holes, which you absolutely understand. And as I was doing that, I was making a little bit of a directory. I had a document and I'd put in what I'd found and a link to where I'd found it. And I started compiling all these things. I got asked to do public speaking in 2022 about a lot of things that I had discovered. And I found that just about every link that I had collected was gone, expired, deleted from history. So I really look at your YouTube channel. It's like a directory of all the rabbit holes that everybody wants to go down.
It's certainly come that way, and I guess as you go down these rabbit holes, though I have for many, many years now, it's kind of you put it all together, all the jigsaw pieces of what is going on, and it is really amazing and enlightening to do all that.
Absolutely. And that's why I suggest to people, firstly, I mean, we're going to put your YouTube link and your website link with the show notes here. But if everybody wants to start putting those pieces together, as you beautifully said it, they just need to go to your website, your YouTube, and just start trolling through the different speakers and start learning and listening that way. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And these days it's short form content as well, the reels and TikTok and stuff, and people's attention spans have gotten shorter. So we've tried to focus more on that because that's just the reality of people are time poor and attention spans are lower. So I've been trying to explain concepts that are kind of deep and difficult to understand and break them down into 90 seconds or 3 minutes, as well as the long format stuff these days.
Yeah. Yeah, because I actually did hear the other day somebody said that the general attention span is 8 seconds. Wow,
Mm,
eight
yeah.
seconds. Everyone's just scroll, scroll.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got to keep people's attention. But the fact is that truth is stranger than fiction. And so, I used to think history was boring at school and stuff, but once you find out our true history and whatever, it's just more incredible than any movie. And so that's what brings people in. People don't become a conspiracy theorist or a truth and then go back into the matrix. There's only one way once you start finding out the truth. Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point. There's no getting going back when you open that door. So
Mm.
tell me, you've got a platform with all of these different topics and subjects and people on it. What are you trying to figure out?
I think I've kind of got to the bottom of the rabbit hole for the most part now about what's really going on and stuff. And it's just trying to get people to live a better life or know the truth. Like knowledge is power. And so many people feel, I think, a bit lost in the modern world. A lot of the basic human needs are getting harder and harder to meet. Everyone's kind of stressed and time poor. And yeah, once you find out the truth that things don't have to be this way, there's a far better way that everyone could have abundance. And it's a very small group of evil people that have got themselves into these positions of power across every discipline
Yep.
that are making things this way. And so there's a lot more of us than them. And so once everyone realizes what's going on, people are going to stop listening to these people and paying taxes to these people. And we're going to go back to local community and healthy food and just, yeah, it's going to be amazing, but it's going to take some time for this change to occur.
Yeah, can't happen fast enough, that's for sure.
It's happening faster than ever at the moment. So it's good to see after researching this for 25 years. Yeah.
You've been 25 years at it.
Yeah, so I was first got into conspiracies or the truth movement in grade 6 or 7 when we got the internet. And the first thing I remember searching was UFOs and aliens. And then shortly after that, this was in like 99, 2000. So then shortly after that was September 11th and researching all that. And then really around the GFC, that's when I really started to go a lot deeper once I was at university by that stage studying pharmacy because I
Yep.
was always fascinated in I'd always been really sporty and I wanted to know how does the body work, how does the brain work and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
And I had a lot of spare time in between classes and whatever, so I was just watching all these documentaries about the global financial crisis and getting really deep into these banking families that run the world and how they got bailed out and all that stuff. And I became a bit of a gold and silver bug at that point. And then a couple of years later, read about Bitcoin and thought, wow, this is our best sort of chance. Decentralized systems and encryption and privacy, and these are all the things the world needs. The
Yep.
way that big technology is going and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's just been a gradual process of researching more and more of what's really going on. What is this new world order system they're trying to push us into?
So you're talking about like from primary school, you were already questioning things.
Yeah, I know. I look back and I don't know what that was in me that made me see the world differently or question things. And you can talk to my friends and they'll say at school I was kind of like that, a bit of a weirdo. Like I was still sporty and that, but I always had little theories and things I was researching on the side and whatnot. I just saw the world differently. And even when I was studying pharmacy, I was very much into like nutrition and plant medicines and that as well. And
Mhm.
so that was one of those things where I've seemed to have a lot of duality in my life already, where you learn the extreme of one and the anti-extreme of the other and come to your own conclusions. And this is how you have to conduct all your research, right? And so, yeah, after a few years of being a pharmacist, I worked out that all this is kind of corrupt and just making money for big pharma. None of this actually makes people healthy. The only way to restore health is like through diet, exercise, getting
Yeah.
toxins out of your body, all these natural things.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you because I remember just when I first started working in law after I'd left school, I remember just turning around to a lawyer one day and he wanted me to create a tax invoice. Well, they were just called accounts and bills back then. But I had this epiphany, a bit like things that were happening with you. I said, this is just made up.
Yeah.
This is just made up. And if somebody doesn't pay this, then the next thing you're going to do is send them a letter of demand. And if they don't pay that within 7 days, then you're going to add costs onto it and then you're going to take them to court. This whole thing is just made up.
Yeah, and you can get deep into the whole legal system, and they're kind of the mainstream at the moment is trying to poo-poo that under the guise of like sovereign citizens and stuff. But a lot of our law isn't what it was originally even based off, and you get into like the straw man stuff and maritime law and all
Yes.
this. But again, it's a small group of people taking away more and more freedoms. That the tax and financial system can only extract money from everyone to give to the few mathematically. So all these systems are just designed, to just keep us in this open air prison that most people go their whole lives. We call it the Matrix or whatever.
Yeah.
Most people go their whole lives without ever questioning this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to kind of, I don't know, simplify it and sound like I'm dismissing people that are having a hard time out there in the world. But it is really somebody, it's a monopoly game and somebody made up the games and the rules, and they've got the rest of us playing the game without being aware of the instructions or the rules or anything else.
Yeah, and the only way you can get people to conform is through, it's a war on consciousness and perception. And this gets into the education system and the media. And if no one ever tells you why things are the way they are, and once you understand it, it's just that light bulb moment, the epiphany, as you say, and people go, man, there's no way things have to be this way.
Yes, yeah. What is it in us though, Alex? Like that innate curiosity that you've had since it sounds like the day you were born that gets you looking at things through different eyes. Did mum encourage that? Did dad encourage that in you, or was that just you?
No, they'd never didn't encourage it. I think we had a bit of a sixth sense sort of in our family. My grandma wrote a book about sixth sense in our family and experiences that she'd have. She was a career nurse. She did a whole family history book, and there was a whole chapter about all these unexplained things she'd seen at the hospital, at or around death, and all that sort of thing. So I think maybe I got it genetically a bit from her or whatnot. But no, I think it was just I had a couple of friends that were sort of into this as well. A couple of people I could always chat to about it.
Yeah.
But I think it was more just going down the rabbit hole of something like 9/11 very early on, or the banking system. And once you realize what really happened and how evil these people are pulling the strings on these things, you start to work out their formula where they do these psyops or these mass trauma events to bring in new laws to take away our freedoms or whatever it is. And so they have a certain playbook of things that they have to do, like problem, reaction, solution.
Yep.
And you can kind of see through their plans once you know how they use like occult symbology, numerology, important dates. It's a lot of this is like understanding what we call the occult, right? And people kind of think of the occult as maybe like dark or evil, but
Yeah.
occult just means hidden. And all these people that are in these secret societies and these powerful people, they study a lot of this stuff because it has to do with, well, how does the mind work and human perception, and how can you program people um, to follow what you want them to do? And we're kind of in this situation now where Max Igan calls it the people farm. Most people, we are just being farmed for our money, for our tax, for our energy as well. We can get into the spiritual side of all this. And it doesn't have to be this way. And people only go along with it because they've never been shown another way to live, really, through school or the media or anything.
So there are instructions to how this world works, and they're in the hands of a few, not the many. And it sounds like I've interviewed a lot of people, and I often, get them to have a look at their childhood because there were events and things that happened that kind of show you the future of what your life's going to be. But I haven't come across somebody who so clearly, like you, was just born to do what you're doing right now.
I think Max Igan spoke about when he was like 4, he was saw the world very differently. So I think some people maybe I don't know, gets into things like reincarnation, or is there old souls, or is it just some people in different environments? Like I spent a lot of time alone in the bush. I grew
Yeah.
up in Tasmania. So I
Okay.
was all like outside from sun up till sundown, either playing sport or climbing trees or like tinkering and stuff. So I don't know if that sort of thing keeps you more in touch with nature, out of the matrix, versus kids these days that grow up in
Yeah.
apartments and barely touch grass or see the sun or climb a tree. So yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I don't have an
Yeah,
answer. Yeah.
I think you've just touched on it. I think you've just hit the nail on the head. Being integrally in the bush and in nature for a large part of your childhood, you were tuned into, I don't know whether people call it, the collective consciousness and the Akashic records, and there's all sorts of names for, the energy that we're all intrinsically a part of. But I
Yeah.
think you just hit it there because you were already tapped straight into the source of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another huge part was also like plant medicines as I got older. And I was one of those people that was always a bit like, I'd done party drugs at uni and stuff, but thought, oh, I don't want to do those psychedelics and not be in control. And then you had some experiences with like mushrooms, DMT, ayahuasca, and nothing will kind of open your consciousness more to the possibilities that consciousness can kind of leave our body. And a lot of this stuff's been declassified now about remote viewing, astral projection, and experiments that the CIA were doing. And so a lot of people, like whatever mutual friend Rachel Vaughan, or a lot of these people that are doing like energy work or doing this type of stuff that's always been labeled taboo,
Yeah.
it's very, very real. And I've got friends that weren't into this, and now they've kind of worked on it and mastered it, and they can do things like astral projection or controlling their dreams and
Yeah.
this type of stuff. So I think all of this stuff is just so sort of natural, and abilities that we've lost, and maybe everyone had them back in the day and things
Yeah.
like that.
I think you're absolutely right. I think everybody had them, they were born with them, and we're all at different stages of reclaiming the truth of who we really are.
Yeah, I was just chatting to someone else this morning about the psychic schools they have now in Europe and stuff. I'm not sure if you've seen these videos with like children and even adults where they're completely blindfolding them and teaching them to see or
Yes.
whatever. So it's very clear that we have so much more powers than our sort of physical senses in our physical body. I think at the bottom of like all this cover up that they don't want people to know how powerful we are, that we are spiritual beings, and some people want to call that your soul, your spirit, your consciousness, the divine spark, whatever. But we kind of have this like light body that is within our nervous system and our brain, our pineal gland, like this electricity that runs the physical body.
Mm,
But that light body can leave the body and have these other states of consciousness and stuff as well.
absolutely. We are the greatest creative power on this planet, and we're acting like a bunch of fish flapping around on a pier.
Yeah, and creativity, that creative spark is super important to all this because for whatever reason, these people at the top that are evil and they're doing these horrendous things to children and all that, worshipping Satan, Lucifer, Moloch, all these different deities, whatever name you want to give them, it's evil. They seem to, whatever it is, be possessed or have lost their soul, and they've lost that creative spark and they don't have the creativity. So as I said before, a lot of the psyops and things they're doing now, that it's not really that creative. They're doing the same things. There's nothing new under the sun, as they
Yes,
say. And
yes,
so the same tools like debt-based money that were being used to enslave people 1,000 years ago or whatever, it's the same thing happening now. Poisoning of the food, dumbing down, not giving them the burning important books so they don't know the true history. All those things are the same things happening now. And then you look at how this has kind of bled through into society, and people say, look at the quality of music now versus beautiful old
yes,
music. And
yeah,
so there's no creativity in music. Look at the movie industry. They're just rehashing old movies or rehashing comic books. Like
yes.
it's just this human creativity has been stifled by these ruling elites in all the industries,
Mm.
versus, and people are feeling that now. That's why they're looking outside the traditional matrix systems that had all the power and control to alternate media, stations like yours or mine and that.
Well, we've just become so far away from the source of who we actually are. And the further away has consequences for us. Like even through your own life, you're, connected with nature and really intrinsically a part of that. But then you're going to the school system and the education system. Did you lose yourself in there? Did you lose that connection through school?
I did. I sort of would have, I'd describe it as going back into the matrix a bit for a few years. So, I
Mm.
mean, at one point in my 20s, I was like meditating a lot and yeah, really into this stuff. And I guess when I got that job and was in working as a pharmacist and nine to
Yeah,
five, I had a partner at the time, just wanted to buy a house, have a nice car, maybe
yeah,
start a family by the time we're 30, like just the matrix life. And all my friends were kind of doing that as well. There was one or two that were into this stuff, but that was just life. And then when I quit pharmacy in 2017 to start the YouTube channel, yeah, I guess we were able to talk a little bit more about the evil and the corruption. We spoke a lot about Bitcoin, crypto, gold, and silver, but we still spoke about a few conspiracy things and like the corruption in the world and whatnot. But then it was kind of for me, I had to hit rock bottom and I broke my back playing footy. And that started me on this slow path of getting addicted to painkillers, basically, and
right.
really, really badly addicted by the end of it. And it was one of those things where everything was going so well, and this was lingering in the background. So the business was growing well, we're making lots of money,
Mhm.
but I'd lost that, yeah, lost my soul a little bit. Looking back on it now, trying to talk to people about what it's like to be addicted to a substance, it's almost like being possessed. And
Yeah.
this kind of gets it deep into like big pharma, right? And pharmacopoeia and all that stuff. But, when you see addicts do bad things and you say, well, how could someone do that? It's almost like you lose yourself. And so for me, getting off those things and going through that withdrawal, it was almost like another reset on
Yeah.
my path that had to happen to almost like lose everything and lose yourself to start again and then re-heal with plant medicines, get super, super healthy. I really went down the rabbit hole of what is the healthiest a human can be with like sauning, cold plunging, nutritious food, filtering your water, detoxing. And so then it took a few years to build back up to really be the best version of yourself. And I kind of view that as my dark night of the soul or hero's journey or whatever that I
I
think a
love
lot
it.
of
I
people.
love it. Even though it was very difficult, I can hear you loud and clear, right? But thank you so much for sharing that part of things because what I hear from you, that's why I asked, did you get lost into the system? The system I just see is full of a bunch of programs. I like to see them like big thought bubbles all over the place, vying for your attention. And the outside world wants you. It wants you caught up in consumerism and materialism and the programming really is find a partner, settle down, have a job, have kids, and that's it, right? So along comes you breaking your back, right? And then an addiction to painkillers. And let me just say right now, Alex, you're speaking to an ex-drug addict, right? I was a drug addict and a drug dealer. So I've kind of got an idea of some of what was going on in your world, right? But it's the outside worlds, or the devil, or whatever you want to call it, anybody out there that's trying to pull you away from who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can kind of get into that spiritual war when people talk about like mind parasites or entities trying to feed off your negative energy.
Yep.
I've got a bit of a theory about, I call it the dopamine, serotonin, yin yang in the brain.
Mhm.
Everything in our modern world is geared towards dopamine. Money, fame, greed, porn addiction, gambling, vaping, like all these things that people, vices that they can't put down, versus serotonin, which we're not really taught a lot about.
Yeah.
True connection, meditation, these plant medicines that were all made highly illegal because they act on these receptors that reconnect you with yourself and others and nature. And so I think this is where the pendulum's swinging now. And a lot of this stuff you see, like breath work and yoga and psychedelics becoming legal and whatever, like this is the pendulum swinging back. And people are very aware of like social media being addictive now and having dopamine detoxes from the screen and all this stuff that wasn't really in the public consciousness 5, 10 years ago.
Well, because when you're talking about dopamine, you're talking about spikes. Spikes and spikes and spikes over and over again of excitement, of elation, of I've got to have more. That was great. Those quick hits that everybody's looking for, that's the dopamine hit, yeah?
Yeah, because dopamine can be like it's a natural part of us and it can be that natural reward thing. And sometimes it's perceived as like the pleasure molecule, but it also is important to drive healthy motivation. But in the modern world, it's not coming from healthy means. It's
Mm.
you have a choice where you can go out and work hard on a project or train to run a marathon and get that big hit of dopamine naturally after lots of
Yep.
work.
Yep.
But everyone now has got whatever they want at one click of the button. All these, young men, the porn addiction's a good example, right? All this overstimulation that
Yes.
no human consciousness had never seen before. And now you can get whatever you want 24/7 at the click of a button for free. And this is completely burning out and hijacking our reward systems in all facets of life.
And they're triggering all those lower areas of our existence. I mean, for people that understand chakras, it's a great example of it. It's the lower three chakras, which are just about survival and safety and reproduction and all that. It's just triggering those lower energies all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And people can frame it as the chakras. You can frame it as like the reptilian survival brain.
Yep.
Um, yeah, we're all just describing the same sort of phenomenon with different languages and stuff, but it's absolutely where people are being kept in a fear state. Just the cost of living, for example, in Australia at the moment, that background fear for young people to not be able to afford food and shelter and stuff and not really have a long-term plan, like all these things are kind of like a drug addict where you just don't want to think about it, or you numb out, or you'll go and drink or take your mind off it. And all this kind of thing keep us in that high cortisol, that fear state,
Yeah.
which prevents people from using the more complex processing parts of the brain to think critically. And that's why we get things like COVID or certain conspiracies, which are very hard for people to accept that politicians and rich and powerful people are doing things to kids. They can't accept it because it's too much for
Yes.
them. It's an overload of like fear and anxiety and stuff, even if you can show them 100 bits of evidence that show that this is true, but it still doesn't click with them. And this is kind of one of the battles we're in to unprogram people.
You're absolutely right, because people, the system's in overload as it is, it's full. It's at capacity mentally, right, and emotionally. So if somebody tries to pour just a little bit more in, people either, if they engage, they've got that they could actually have a breakdown by trying to engage in just a little bit more. It's too much.
Yeah, and so a big part because we are seeing more people wake up than ever, right? And it's so acceptable to talk about conspiracy theories and that these days. But humanity is collectively going to have to go through a dark night of the soul, I think, to realize that everything's been a lie, and that can be a traumatic thing. And it's like the seven stages of grief and hero's journey, whatever you want to call it. I think there's a real ego death that needs to happen for these people that were, laughing at you for whatever thing you tried to tell them, that are now gradually coming round to it and go, oh my God, maybe that person was right about that thing or everything, whatever it is. And so
Yeah.
that kind of, I think there's a lot of healing work that's going to have to be done the next few years as well.
Well, I think even with you telling your story about breaking your back and then, right, having to completely reinvent yourself, isn't that surrender? It's like surrendering who Alex was right up until that point, who he'd become. Your whole identity is what you surrendered. Is that right?
Yeah, I think in some ways that's right. I think in some ways when you're like just so close to death, I guess, when you feel like, you're going through that withdrawal and you feel like you've lost everything and whatever, it's like you've got nothing to lose anymore. And so there's no room, or you don't care about what other people think or the bullshit or whatever. And so you've
Yep.
got freedom to become your best self. But then there's also the part of me that thinks, if you believe in reincarnation or soul contracts or even just life, you can learn the best lessons from the hardest times. Like none of this would have happened if I didn't have that duality of being a pharmacist and then being a drug addict and into natural medicine, or
Yep.
being sporty and then breaking my back, or
Yep.
I've been rich, I've been poor and had to start again. Like all this duality. If Earth is this school to learn lessons and stuff, then I've certainly learned a lot and it's made me a better person, right? But it feels hard at the time.
I like that because what we just were talking about before is like everybody's so highly stressed and highly strung that they can't handle a little bit more. There's a choice they've got. They're either going to make it or break it, and you made it. Like you let it break you, so it could make you. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. And in one of the plant medicine journeys I had with DMT ayahuasca, um, I I was like made out of Lego is the only way I can describe it. And
Okay.
all the pieces broke down exactly as you just described.
Mhm.
And then the kind of these entities that were there, they built it back up, and they were kind of like, congratulations, you've built yourself back up. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that was pretty crazy to see. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that your story, that story is important for people out there that are feeling like they're on the edge and that they don't have a way out. I mean, even for me, when I had the shift, I had a mental breakdown, and I think it was 10 years overdue. I think I'd been so terrified of what letting go meant. It happened overnight. When I finally let it happen, I lost my mind and it happened overnight. And I woke up the next day and I was like a new version. I was like that new Lego version of you going, all right, now what do I have to do to get back on track? Let's get my life sorted.
Yeah. No, it's exactly. It can be really scary for people to wake up and realize everything's a lie, like we touched on before, right? But it's also very like you have to do it. You have to realize that what you thought was true is the lie. That's the real hard part for people. So they feel like they're living this completely different world. But yeah, I think gradually more and more people are coming to our side of the boat, right? And so it's getting. Do you think about people like David Icke or Fritz Springmeier or Jordan Maxwell, these people that were trying to tell people all this like 30, 40, 50 years ago?
Yes.
There was like a handful of people on the planet that knew what was really going on. And now there was another, was it Oliver Tree that I saw died overnight? And you get all these people on TikTok, they're starting to break down the symbolism and all these things. Well, was this another sort of psyop, or what does it mean? And was it done deliberately? And it's just so many people are at least questioning things or looking into things these days. It's insane compared to
Yes.
pre-COVID.
It is. It is. It's incredible. But what I really, really like is that you came out the other side, right? You're letting people know that, you reinvented yourself pretty much. Let's let them know. Like, I want people to know that if they're going to let go and they're going to start really opening up to what the world is really all about and who we really are, how's your life been since you broke your back and since you went through all that journey and since you left being a pharmacist behind?
Yeah, so I mean, this has all happened around COVID, I guess, when it really hit its peak, and when I took time off work to get off painkillers. I'd also had a big startup I was involved in fail. At the
Yep.
time, I was trying to build like a digital bank to go up against the banks and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, we were lucky we
Oh,
were in the
that
position
was
to.
that was adventurous, that one.
Yeah, it was. It was. We were lucky we're in the position where we could like repay all the investors in the end and whatnot. But it was just like one of those things where everything happens at once. Took
Mhm.
that time off, and then it was yeah probably just after COVID where I came back and started making content again after getting strikes on YouTube during COVID.
Mhm.
But I guess you kind of gradually change your friendship group a little bit. You know, I still have all my old friends and I still can hang out with them and whatever, go to the pub and watch the football, whatever. It's not like you can't hang out in that old world,
Yeah.
but you tend to find these more authentic people of all different ages and sexes and, you
Yes.
know, just anyone that's authentic and on this path. It is so easy when you realize someone else is kind of into the truth movement. You just become good friends instantly almost. And there's no bullshit. So that's been great. The other big change was on YouTube and like social media, as I said, probably 3 years ago, the algorithms started to change. And so all the things that you weren't allowed to say, gradually you could say them more. And so I was kind of like kept pushing the boundaries a little bit and whatnot and seemed to not be getting any strikes. And I don't know if that's because I don't like monetize any of my stuff on any platform, if that's allowed me to get away with a bit more than maybe other people.
Yeah.
But these days, yeah, you can pretty much say, talk about adrenochrome or vaccines or whatever it is,
Mm.
and it seems to be getting through. I think I've only got one strike again in the past 3 years, and there's like nothing is off limits we won't talk about on the
Well, you're
show.
doing something right, aren't you?
Yeah, and so that's been really good, and just covering a lot of that old things that I think are really important, big mass trauma events that are. I know some of these are obviously controversial. We did a whole week on Port Arthur, for example, for the 30-year
Yeah.
anniversary, and some of these topics, which I think are very obvious that the official narrative is not what actually happened, and so yeah, that got a couple of million views, and it's just it only takes that one thing to click, and I think in Australia, so many people have not aware that we haven't had that recession in 30 years that other countries had. It's the she'll be right, mate attitude. Most people have never seen a rainy day until very recently because property's always gone up and everyone owned a house. And the facts are Australia is one of the most heavily indoctrinated countries from all the propaganda, MK Ultra, Operation Paperclip, Operation Matchbox, where they came into our media and our schools and our psych departments. And then we're one of the most heavily fluoridated countries in the world. And that's
Mm.
probably one of the top tips I can get to people is start filtering your water and getting out the fluoride and that, and you'll feel your IQ start to go up again.
Well, I think the best way to put it is that everyone here in Australia, it's like we're in kindergarten here. We have not had any great life experiences from the outside world to bother us, to even give us food for thought. We're very much a complacent, she'll be right bunch of people.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And we spoke about all that duality and how to learn and grow
Yep.
personally and spiritually before. But as you say, people in Europe or the Middle East, think about it, all throughout their history, they've lived through like wars or overthrows of government or famines or whatever. Whereas in Australia, it's kind of she'll be right.
They know the cycles and they know the ups and downs. Where here, we've had nothing. We've had
Mm.
nothing like that at all. And I think we've just become more and more complacent until right now.
Yeah, and I think there are some pretty tough times ahead for Australia. I don't know if you want to get into that or not, but I see what they're trying to do at the moment. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I had somebody on last week. He moved from Victoria to South Australia before COVID hit, and only just recently he's moved from South Australia to Malaysia. And he said everybody needs a plan B right now because it's not going to get easy. What are you seeing coming our way?
So I think this ties into the whole New World Order and what's happening globally, where these people are trying to play out specific prophecies and all this type of stuff. And I think the goal is to really usher in like transhumanism and AI and get that running everything and almost like a Matrix type scenario. You see Elon and that celebrating how they've brain chipped more people recently and they're rolling out 6G soon and all this type of stuff. We already see how destructive technology's been for people. So that is a huge part of it. But the next phase of what they really want to do is kick off a civil war, and they've been ushering in through mass immigration,
Yeah.
more and more of these people, and we've seen crime rates go up, and people can say, oh, that's racist or not, but that's just the fact that we've seen everyone that lives in Melbourne, or even I've got friends calling me in Queensland now. Oh yeah, gang broke into our house last night, knives and all these things we've seen, and it's more evident in Europe, but that is really about to kick off in Australia as well. And the media are absolutely going to drum that up and cause a lot of racial tensions and that sort of thing, and play the two sides off against each other. But that is their goal. It's to create civil war. And so we all, violence. They're going to bring in more laws, digital ID, mass surveillance. Like, this is why they're building all these data centers. So it's all part of their plan, where they want us to all kill each other while they sit back and watch the depopulation, enslavement agenda play out. And if everyone realized who the real enemy was and that we're all on the same team, a lot of these people have been programmed through radicalized religions. A lot of us have been programmed to hate them through the media and whatever of the past, all the movies in Hollywood over the past whatever. And so it's all the same war. It's all the programming we have to undo on both sides.
Programming, absolutely. We're all brought up differently, without a doubt. And I remember years ago when we got a lot of people coming from overseas in here, like from Asian cultures or even India. And then when I went and visited India and I saw how everybody drives and how the traffic operates and everything else, I mean, to me, I was in awe, right? Like they just to walk across a major intersection takes a lot of trust and a lot of faith, and you just go for it, right? It looks like organized chaos, and it works. It works. But then when they come here to our country, and we've been using our roads in specific ways, and then you get other people that are taking risks and jumping in front, and they're just behaving the way that they do back in their own country. And you can't break those sorts of behaviors overnight. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just a huge difference from, because Australia's been kind of founded on multiculturalism, and it was probably reasonably successful, most people would say, up until recently. But it's very different for someone wanting to move here for the Australian way of life, for a better opportunity for their family and doing, honest work and whatever, learning the Australian language. I've got friends of all races and backgrounds and whatnot, and most of them are just peaceful people. And then it's very different to getting military-aged radical men who are doing, knife attacks, rapes, home burglaries, not making any effort to learn the language. They're all getting on benefits. They're staying with their own people with their own language. Like, it is just so much different. And this has all been deliberately done, funded by these NGOs, George Soros, Open Border Society, these Zionist billionaires. There's documents behind how they want to flood these white European Christian nations that tended to have good, values and good economies and stuff. This is the easiest way to destroy them. And this is all documented, and people can say, oh, that's a conspiracy, but just look it up.
And there's going to be a bunch that get caught up in all of that. But what about you? So, how are you? I feel like I'm a bit at the sidelines watching the show. That's how I feel I am at the moment. I'd really like to encourage people to come and stand at the sidelines and not be a part of the show. The more people that do that, the better. How are you operating? How are you keeping out of the shit show that's going on out there?
I mean, I'm in Tasmania, and it's pretty rural here. I've got a lot of friends that are like rural, grow their own food, our own meat. We've got fresh water. I spend a lot of time hiking out in nature when I'm not making content and stuff. So it's very different down here to, say, living in the city in Melbourne or Sydney or whatnot. But I guess I think I see my role as, like, if you've got 25 years of this knowledge of what's going on, and when people are confused, it's like, kind of, I feel like my role to help people understand what's going on, to get them on that right path. Because if everybody woke up and realized what's going on, there wouldn't be violence. There wouldn't be people watching the media, and
It'd be done overnight. Yeah.
it'd be done overnight. But unfortunately, it's kind of got to the point now where I think something bad does have to happen in some ways, and whether that's just organic from what is already happening right with this crime, or if they're going to orchestrate another mass event to really kick things off. Yeah.
Well, you talked about duality a number of times earlier on, right? And what I've learned through human behavior is that when we become unconscious, when we're really in that unconscious kind of frame of living our life day to day, we need shock. The only thing that gets people out of the trance and actually to get pay attention is a shock of some sort. Like I just Gosh, I love driving and I love fast cars and I do keep within the speed limit whenever I can, right? But I remember when I got my first little two-door BMW, I would navigate my way through a pack of cars so I could get out the front. And I knew what I was doing, but a couple of times I'd get tooted by somebody and I'd say to them, "You're welcome. You're welcome." Because I think I just woke them up from behind the wheel. They were just sedentary, sort of in the way they were driving their cars. And it took just a little bit of somebody going past them at a faster speed that got their attention and actually woke them up from unconsciously driving. And I think, yeah, if you can be that shock, shock them, Alex. They need the shock to wake up.
Yeah, no, I've kind of view it as planting seeds, right? And so what all the people in your news feed, your friends that might think you're a bit crazy when you've shared something over the years, at least you've planted the seed or the idea, and then they might see someone else talk about it. They might see you post about it again. This time it's got like 1,000 likes, and they go, "Oh!" All of a sudden we're hitting this critical mass where people don't want to be left out, or they go, "Geez, maybe there is something to that," because you can't force wake people to wake up. They have to do it on their own terms or at their own time, or it has to be something that shocks them individually.
Yes.
But when that point comes, if they go, "Oh, geez, I know that friend of mine was always into their natural health, or that friend of mine was always into these conspiracies," maybe I'll ask them what they think about this, because this topic that I never thought could have been true, I now believe in, and so I want to know more. And so this is where it's at with, I think, everyone just kind of playing their role in big ways or small ways, to try and wake up humanity to what's going on, how much more we can be.
And to unplug is not easy. It's not easy. It's a process, and it is painful. It is painful. I mean, I'm going to just say that out loud for everyone to hear. You know it. I know it. Many people know it. Um, I think about when people are cleaning up their bodies and they're detoxing and starting to, live a lifestyle similar to what you are. Um, Detoxing yourself, unplugging from social media, unplugging from certain behaviors and addictions that you've got, it's uncomfortable, extremely uncomfortable. And I listened to somebody just this morning. She said she'd gone and had some acupuncture done, and all of a sudden, here she was a week later, feeling, all sorts of different feelings in her body. And I just had to laugh because it's like as soon as people start cleaning their bodies up and pain starts turning up in their body somehow, they think that a couple of needles have completely messed their body up instead of the years of crappy toxic living.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big thing with like weight loss and that as well, right? When all these toxins can accumulate in your fat, or with emotional trauma that's stored in the body. So as you say, you've got to do that shadow work and like face the hard things of yourself to make yourself whole again. And I think, like being an addict, right? It might be painful, but it's only going to get more painful the longer you wait. And
Yes.
so if you're starting to realize that a lot of this might be true, but then choosing to bury your head in the sand and hoping that life's going to go back to the way it was, like in the good old days, think about what's coming next. And it might be, the children is one that's, I think, going to get a lot of people, right, when they find out what these people have been doing to children, but then also what's being pushed in the schools. And I think
Yes.
you said, Craig Cole and that as well. But,
Yes.
all this kind of agenda to normalize pedophilia and hypersexualize children and stuff, like, I think that's the red line for a lot of people. Particularly when they find out the more evil stuff that these elites are doing to
I just
children.
saw on just YouTube last night a couple of ads come up, and they're new ads that the Australian government is putting out. And, it'll be a parent and a child having this, oh, nobody should touch you anywhere that, makes you feel uncomfortable. And I was horrified to listen to this ad, because it's being created by the level of society that are part of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw the South Australian mum. I did chat to her, I forget her name now, but she sued the government because they were teaching pedophilia and bestiality at a South Australian school. And her daughter came home and was scared of her brother after what she'd been taught at school about incest.
Yes.
And she won that first part of the case. And so, yeah, people are starting to wake up to this stuff, just how evil it is. And it's always under the guise of like education or equality or whatever. But it is these people at the very top that are trying to normalize pedophilia and sexualization of children.
Yeah, yeah, protect your children, people, without a doubt. So, what is your advice then, Alex, for people that are, just stepping out onto the edge? What should they be looking for in their life? I mean, everybody that I've talked to in the talks that I've done over the years want your life.
Um, I think I think you've just got to get back to natural law is something we find ourselves talking about. Like we've got so far away from nature, right? Um, whether it's what we're teaching or yeah, like nature has a way to make the pendulum swing back. So you can create all this artificial food and spray it with chemicals and stuff, but then people are going to want natural food again, and nature will keep being nature.
Yeah.
And so that's the same with a lot of this, the trans agenda and all this type of stuff. You can go away from nature all you want, but the pendulum swing back. So just getting people to realize what is true and authentic to them and stand up for that. And you'll be surprised. There's a lot of teachers in these schools that absolutely understand that this is all crazy and what's going on. And there's good principals that are saying no. Now they're going to get pressure and say you're not going to get the funding and all this type of stuff. But as more and more people protest, even these small towns that are protesting the data centers that have had little wins. I think there was a town, was it Gympie, that recently got fluoride removed in Australia.
Okay.
So all people can make a difference. They don't realize it, and that's what I'm saying. Like, don't people are so sedated, I know, and time poor and stuff, but it's going to get to this breaking point soon where people are really there's a revolution kind of coming. It's just how and when that happens.
I think you're right. I think, right now we should encourage people, if you've got some doubts, ask. Ask questions of your children's school, of even your place of employment. Just start having some conversations and asking some questions instead of just accepting things and thinking that you haven't got any power or you haven't got any influence, because just the questions themselves will start something.
Yeah, and a couple of examples. I know someone was, put together a bit of a document. I think it was Craig was saying you can give this to teachers and saying, hey, if you teach this at school and my child has any damages, like you will be held personally responsible and pay for it. And then all of a sudden people go, oh, geez, what is being taught? Or going to your doctor if he wants to start you on a statin and telling you cholesterol is bad. Look at the research and the numbers, guys. A lot of this will, if you actually look into it and the numbers needed to treat someone for how many years to stop one heart attack, the numbers show that 90% of people don't get any benefit from most medications and that it costs a lot of money and it has a lot of side effects. This is the same for antidepressants and all these mind altering drugs that everyone's on now, putting all the kids on ADD meds and stuff. Just take a bit of time, and it's easy to do all this research now with, as much as we all hate AI, it can be a time saver for some basic research. But go into the doctor, because a lot of the time, the MK Ultra programming system is very much in the universities, and that includes the doctors.
Yes.
And that's why we often like to think as doctors and pharmacists and people I went through medical school with as intelligent people. But the fact is, a lot of the time, they were the best regurgitators at school that
Yeah.
followed the instructions.
Indoctrinated, absolutely.
And so you've got to break their programming and get them back to first principle thinking and natural law and saying, well, okay, I know you're telling me this tablet stops heart attacks, but all these numbers and stuff show that that's not really the case. And cholesterol is actually really important for every cell in our body. And that the sugar industry, all this corruption, demonization of natural animal fats, which people ate for eternity in favor of seed, like all these things that you can start to look into. And again, you'll end up back at natural law where they've tried to, this all gets into their satanic inversion. Things
Yes.
that are natural and good for you, they need to flip it and invert it and spin
Everything
you a lie.
upside down. Absolutely. And I also have another little mantra. Anything that's extremely popular, question it. Anything that's extremely popular. When everybody started doing avos on toast and having brunches every Sunday and coffee and all that sort of stuff, it's like, really, do you need to spend every brunch on every weekend sitting around doing nothing? and eating foods and drinking drinks instead of, I remember one of my kids said to me, once when he had his little daughter, he said, "How did you used to handle us going out to restaurants and things? Like, you had three kids, I've just got one, and we have such a hard time." And I stopped for a second and I thought about it. And then I looked at him and said, "We didn't go out. We didn't go to restaurants. We went to other people's places, or we had barbecues at home, or we had lunches at home. We didn't do any of that sort of stuff. So we didn't have to worry about it."
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's definitely people are like the Uber Eats culture, right? Like how many people don't know how to cook food properly, let alone like plant or grow food? And
Mhm.
if you, again, you think about what they have done, if they really wanted to, they could turn the power off tomorrow and people would have no idea how to get some
Yes.
food or water in these cities
Yes.
and go without power and stuff. So we have built out our own enslavement grid trade off for convenience. But how many people do you know now that want the dream of living in the country and growing some food and raising their kids, probably homeschooled or in community school or something like? It's just the pendulum is swinging back big time.
It is, it is. And, just the whole concept of these AI centers, I had the data centers, I had a conversation today with somebody, no, sorry, last week, who told me there's 149 of them so far in Australia. And anybody that I ask, what are they for? I ask them, what are they for? Nobody knows what they just think it's for AI, and nobody's thinking any further than that. And with the digital systems and the Internet of Things, dotted throughout people's homes with their Alexis that they do their sound and their commands through, their fridge, their microphone, microwave, their computers. All of those bits of devices are picking up information that are all going to those AI data centers. So they're going to be centralized systems connected with everybody's lives in some way. And the next thing that can happen from that is it can start switching things off.
Yeah, well, this is another big part of the New World Order technocracy I touched on before, right? I think they're deliberately maybe going to crash a lot of the old systems, and maybe they will even reveal some of the bad stuff that's been going on, right? And say, oh, look, we can't trust your politicians, we can't trust your bankers, we need the super intelligent AI to run everything, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
this is no more apparent in Tasmania, where there's a huge data center going in here. That's the first of three. The first one alone is going to use 15% of Tasmania's power. And so the next three, I think, total would use 50% of our power. And so you've got all these local industries that have been trying to get power from hydro for years and being told there's no spare capacity. Along comes big tech, globalist New World Order, rollers out. It's going to create 10 jobs. It's going to suck all the power, all the water, but they get the green stamp, and the public, we've got no idea of like what the details were or whatever really in the background.
Yes.
So this is just such a good example how there's one rule for everyone and then there are rules for them with no questions are asked. But yeah, I don't know, are they going to get away with all this and build all these data centers to AI to run everything and stuff? I'm not sure.
No, no, because in America, Erin Brockovich is on it. She's on it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Um, so your lifestyle, the way you're living your life, for everybody else, really, is it best to encourage people to have that plan B and to start disengaging with the system itself? Is that how you first started doing it, or is Tassie just a little bit different where you already had it that way?
No, I think you still have to make the conscious effort to start really, yeah, filtering your water, getting all your food from either the farmer's market, or I've got friends now that just grow their own food and their own meat
Yeah.
to make sure it's 100% healthy. And I know not everyone has those options, but it's just starting to take those steps. And you don't have to
Mindful.
be
Mm,
perfect. The human body is remarkable. Like, think about all the poisons they've thrown at us for how long, and
mm,
you're still here.
yeah.
And so you only got to do those little things to start making your body healthy. But then it's just like listen to that authentic voice in yourself. If you're starting to get that feeling that crime's picking up in my area or whatever, like what are the trade-offs? Are you really going to lose that much if you have to move somewhere to the country where you're probably going to maybe get a completely different job? Everyone there's probably nicer community though, still go to the local on the weekend, and the kids still play together in parks, and there's local sport. Like there's so many options, but you really need to think about, well, what is really important. And
Yes.
for a lot of people, it's that letting go, it's that ego. It's like, oh well, my big house in this nice suburb and my job, I'll never get paid as much if I leave this big corporate I'm at and stuff. But more and more people are feeling that they're selling their soul to live in the matrix, and it's not resonating with them. So that's a trend that's going to continue. And I think, yeah, when you get those feelings, act on it. Don't wait for a couple more years and then go, oh damn, I wish I had done it when I first thought about it.
Yes. Yes, I agree with that one too, because I think that life taps you on the shoulder and says that if you want a healthier life and you want a better life, then you need to start making some changes. And the changes usually mean, I don't know, just letting go of a few things.
Yeah, you find things start to fall into place, and stuff you're wasting your time on the TV you were watching, like you'll just be upskilling yourself in every aspect of your life, like watching and reading things and learning how to be healthier, and then your mind gets better, and then you become more creative. Maybe you have a little side hustle, or at least you're growing a bit of your own food at home, or whatever. It's just all these little things where, yeah, your life will just gradually get better if you're putting in that effort to learn the truth.
Well, how do you go from being a pharmacist to a YouTuber?
Yeah, no, my ex didn't like it at the time. She thought I was completely crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. It's just one of those things. I had a calling to talk about, again, that tap on the voice, that
Right.
intuition in your head, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's been a wild ride and stuff, but I guess it sort of always has worked out for 9 years now.
Well, I think a lot of people are actually getting that tap on the shoulder. And I think that's why I'm talking to you today. They need to hear that you made a few significant changes and look where you are now. So, for everybody out there, if you're getting a tap on the shoulder, listen.
Yeah, yeah, the new communities and friends you'll make, it's like you'll never look back. And that's one thing that I think I'm working with a couple of people now to get these community gatherings and meetups going in like
Yeah.
every capital and every town and whatever. Because one of the big problems is if people wake up before their friends and family and work colleagues, they feel very alone. But once you find only one or two people is all you need that are also on this path, and you'll strike a friendship that's stronger and more authentic than any of your previous ones.
Well, it's the reality of like attracts like, isn't it? You know, like when you were a pharmacist, you hung around with a whole heap of kind of, academic people and pharmaceutical people, and it's like attracts like. When I was a drug addict, I hung around with drug addicts. But
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you decided to make a change, you started to navigate the old friendships and the new friendships, yeah?
Yeah, and a lot of those people like I went through uni with probably think I'm crazy for posting some of the stuff and whatnot. They're still recommending people to get COVID boosters and stuff. Like
Yeah.
they are programmed, but I'm not like angry with them or anything. They're victims of this programming as well, and people
Yes.
need to be kind of held to account to have that shock that we kind of, when that pharmacist, whatever, gives one and it directly leads to a death in the shop or whatever. Like they need to see something where they go, oh my God, I'm wrong. So yeah, they need to be held to account to some degree,
Yeah.
but we have to treat all these people as victims of programming, whatever it is we're dealing about, because humanity is a victim of programming by evil people at the top.
And just trust that they're all going to get that tap on the shoulder, and it's not up to us, right? You're planting seeds, I'm planting seeds, but there's something bigger than us that's tapping them on the shoulder as well, right?
Yeah, and I think, again, the spiritual side of things, people can talk about what that is, where that voice comes from, but maybe it is just like within us,
Yes.
deep down, and we've kind of forgotten it. I don't think it necessarily has to be like guardian angels or a higher power or whatnot. I think we kind of all have something special in us that gives us consciousness.
No, I think it's just me. There's just a higher aspect of me, and she just keeps tapping away all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And different
Like,
religions called whatever people come. If people come to a peaceful place through God or Buddhism or through breath work, again, we can't fall into this divide and conquer. Oh, that's not right. That's not right. There's only this way. If people are living a peaceful life, however they get to it through some of those, all of those, none of those, like that's fine. It's just do no harm, natural law kind of
let
stuff.
them find their own way because they will. Absolutely.
Yes.
Alex, it's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. I think that your YouTube space is phenomenal. It's like a directory, and I highly recommend everybody go and check out your directory. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you so much for the insight into what your life's been all about as well.
No worries, Helen. Pleasure chatting with you, and we'll have to do it again sometime. Good luck with everything. Cheers.
Thank you so much.